time for the Albion Mag radio show. A very good morning. It's Saturday morning, 11 o'clock, live on 1BTN, available online, DAB Digital and 101.4 FM. Dean Kilford back from his jollies in the studio with Leon.
I didn't give myself that much of a break when you were away. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How have you been? Where have you been?
Just, as you do, bit of Cuba, bit of Mexico, bit of Tampa. Yeah, just. So it was an awesome experience. I got to see a lot of American sport when I was over there, which I even caught the Albion, caught the game against West Ham as well. Oh, right. It was on the telly we had like a little condo, and it was, well, what time was it? I don't know. It's like 2 PM, and I just sort of popped in, and I was like, it's a bit hot, so I just flipped the telly on, and I was like, it's nothing. Hold on a minute. What's this? Oh, it's the second half of the game. So I was like, brilliant. So I got to see the second half of that, but yeah, brilliant. Very good.
So you went back to the site of your nuptials?
Yes, our anniversary, 5th year, and we've revisited the beach we got married on. But I'm sure the listeners don't care about such, so, especially when it's International Week.
Oh, yeah, we're already planning.
Now, International Week, of course, more importantly, it is non-league day. A very big day across the country, a very important day for football, just in terms of this is where we celebrate the lower tiers of football, which without there'd be no upper tiers of football, because it's a pyramid.
Gotta have the roots.
Absolutely. So we'll be going, we're doing a bit more in depth than non-league today. Of course, for those of you long-term listeners will know that our man Leon's been running campaign for a season and a half, and his wishes came true, kind of, last week when Lewis Dunk has been called up to the England squad. Yes. And we'll discuss that, of course, and whether, with the suspension to Stones, whether he might get a chance to play on Monday night against Spain. Not a credible amount of other news to come, but we've got any Albion news. We've got the roundup of obviously our other players playing international football. We've got a little preview of the women playing tomorrow against Everton, and the under-23s or the under-21s in the Checkatrade Trophy. Yeah, that's the show in a nutshell.
Just as well going big on non-league.
It is really. Tom is also in the studio. Tom, a very good morning to you. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. I got a brilliant night's sleep last night. Kind of.
Right, you said to me off air that you're not allowed to gloat about this, because if your wife's listening, she's not happy as it is.
I got a much better night's sleep than she did, so I'm sorry if you're listening.
Of course, social media, Tom, is, and we're running a poll this week. We've decided to put it non-league focus, considering it's non-league day.
Yeah, we've got, as it's non-league day today, we want to know how often you go along and support your local non-league club. Yeah, we'll run through the results. So it's got 14 minutes left. There's still time to vote. So 13% of you could not care less.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, so 13% of you couldn't care less at all. 25% might look out for results of your local team. 29% go whenever you can. And 33% go a few times a season.
There we are. So let's we'll see. Is that final? Is that the final?
14 minutes left.
14 minutes left. So if you want to have your say, where do you stand on non-league football? Are you an avid follower, a regular follower? Are you someone that just sort of flies through the papers as and when comes on, or are you the sort of person that just doesn't really care? Let us know. But it is non-league day, and we feel you should care, because we care here at the Albion Mag. But time now to let's talk international football. It feels like an age already. It's only been 8 days since the Albion were in action, and it does feel like months. I don't know, it always does.
Yeah, we were saying after, because we, like many football fans, had a better time in the summer than perhaps we were expecting, especially England fans. We were saying that perhaps we wouldn't be so down on the international breaks this season. I think that's true, plus the Nations League has spiced things up a little. But then with this game, it was a case of mixed feelings, because obviously, our tireless campaigning finally bore fruit as Lewis Dunk, thanks to injuries and whatever, finally got his call up. But then we ended up playing England's first ever international played behind closed doors in history. And it's Croatia's fifth time.
When I heard that stuff, I was like,
Yeah.
interesting.
So this one goes back 2 or 3 years to when somebody mowed a euphemistically a political symbol onto the
that's
pitch.
an interesting way
Yes.
of putting it.
Are we allowed to say what it was?
Of course we are.
Yeah, it was a swastika.
On the pitch.
I don't know if it was actually an employee of the Croatian national football team who, actually decided that the pattern of the pitch should be centered with a centerpiece of a massive swastika, or whether it was done by a right-wing fan. Obviously, yes, they do have a history of fans acting in a way that thankfully the authorities are not willing to tolerate. But the sanctions in this case kind of made England suffer as well, because it meant that it was a very odd game. If that was Lewis Dunk's one and only ever appearance, not that it will be, very odd circumstances.
It was strange because it's interesting because obviously if England fans went over, bought tickets, and the reason they did was because before this announcement of the ban was given, the fixtures were already out, so obviously Eagle fans get their cheaper flights and hotels, so they'd gone out there, and there was a fair few out there, and this stadium thankfully had a few vantage points around
it's like with Dean.
It was, open corners,
theatre of trees,
come and have a little watch over the top, and there was a nice pocket of England fans that they decided in the second half, obviously someone was like, we need to get a camera over there, so we could hear, because in the second half on the mics you could hear the England fans, not incredibly loud, but you could hear them. Yeah,
and they were impeccably behaved. There were some stewards around. We noticed one orange-bibbed steward had sort of located them and was having a little dance along with them chanting. So I think the sort of the hardline stance that they'd taken initially to not let anyone in. I don't know if it was actually a Croatian decision to make it as hard as possible for any England fans to actually get a vantage point, because I don't see why, punishing an international side by playing a game behind closed doors, why should it punish the away side as well as the home side? It doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it?
It doesn't, but I think I remember other closed games, but in not international at club level, and there always seems to be a group of fans that somehow get their way into the ground, but that wasn't the case. Because it was weird being able to hear all the players, hear all the coaches, their instructions, and sometimes quite clearly.
Yes.
Like every call you could hear, which was...
Yeah, it's unusual for a top tier. This is the elite group of UEFA Nations League with the 2 World Cup semi-finalists. It did feel like a training match, and I think it was odd for the players. The first half was a complete non-event, and... Yeah, I think actually it sort of makes you realise just how much of a part the crowd can play in just the overall... Because
that first half, I'm presuming you watched it.
Yeah,
the first half was just like a non-event friendly.
Yeah, totally. It was a weird kickabout. I was...
Hold on, just 2 seconds. We're getting some word in from... what's the deal? Interesting. This is...
We are on. We may be broadcasting to some of you. We've just had a message in that we may not be on air, but I know some of you are listening because I've had a message from my girlfriend. I'm not sure what medium she's listening. So it may be that we're on FM but not on DAB. It may be that we're on DAB but not FM. We may be online. Fine on FM, apparently. We are broadcasting on FM.
Sorry about this, listeners. It's a few technical...
We just want to make sure that as many people as possible is hearing us. But I do know we have listeners on FM radio.
Good. Well, hello to you guys on FM. Yes, so basically, obviously, the strange behaviour of we'll recap, just in case for those of you that weren't listening on FM. The strange nature of that first half was interesting to be able to hear the players... strange environments playing. It was like a non-event friendly where I don't remember. There was that one shot from Perisic in the first half, and Dye hit the post.
Which
was forgotten. That
set
flick
piece,
on header,
in the end, actually, if you add that up to the stats, that was late in the first half, and in the second half, it turned into more of a match, and we kind of bossed it.
I was actually impressed with how we came out in the second half, and.
took it seriously.
Did take it seriously.
Maybe Gareth and the players themselves said, let's do it for those people who have spent all this money and been I don't know what the right word is, but innovative, industrious enough to get a view of the match despite the circumstances and give them a performance to actually to warrant them being there. And we hit the bar, hit the post. We had one off the line, and I mean Rashford had a bit of a mare.
Rashford,
he dollied two into the keeper, which I mean, it's very odd. He just had to get a full blown connection on one of those.
The first one you can kind of, if he was in two minds of what he was going to do and he just got it wrong, fair enough. But the second one, when he's done that brilliant touch to give him the space to curl in, and then
just taps it.
Took too long.
Taps it, takes it right near to the keeper. Yeah, it was a real shame. So would have been
Sancho
3
coming
great points.
That I know. Obviously, the commentators were trying to pick on something good to come out of the game, but his couple of involvements late on, because he didn't really get involved for the first 10 minutes, and then suddenly he sprinted onto a ball which seems he was 10 yards behind the defender and got in there and created a couple of, he didn't create chances in the end, but a couple of nearly moments.
Yeah, so this is the lad who was, or is he still on the books of Manchester City, or did he actually went permanently to Dortmund? Yeah. So unlike Foden, he's elected to take his chances elsewhere, and he's actually had many more. I know he's had more minutes on the pitch.
He's got more assists than any other player in Europe.
Yeah,
for an 18-year-old ain't bad, is it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. So he's decided to take his opportunity in another great league. Perhaps doesn't have quite of the strength and depth, but he's at one of the big clubs there, really, Dortmund.
Absolutely. There was this is an interesting, because Rossignol was speaking midweek about him and about players, because we're starting to see young English players making these moves abroad to in search of first team football, and he was saying that England have lost a generation of players because the money's so good over here, and because it is probably more comfortable and easier to sit in a reserve team and get 20 grand a week, 30 grand a week as a 18, 19-year-old. I mean, I'd happily take that now if I'm honest, but it's easier for them to sit rather than challenge themselves to get first team football in and impress and grow and become the players that they have the potential to become. Yeah,
in a way, it sounds odd, but it's a real test of your motivation and sort of, I think, your ability to look ahead in your life and actually think. Maybe you're somebody who will just be very happy to be comfortably off forever. You can make enough money as a part-time Premier League footballer, as it were, to kind of set yourself up forever. But if you want memories ultimately and the glorious kind of career to look back on, you're going to have to really push yourself and put yourself outside your comfort zone, move abroad, or whatever it takes really, to, because you aren't necessarily going to be able to push your way into a first 11 at somewhere like Manchester City unless you are the absolute top 0.1% or whatever of elite footballer.
But I think you're going to see that even now, at our club. It's I don't know, I could be wrong, because we've got a fantastic youth team which we'll get onto later in the show, but I don't think someone like Connolly is likely, as good a player as he is, going to get himself minutes in that first team, although arguably a couple of years ago maybe he would have
broken
through. Now we've got essentially 3 £15 million plus strikers to choose from. Where does he get his chance, if he gets his chance? Yeah,
I mean, obviously Solly has legacy on his side, and that's and he's had a few extra opportunities that he might not have had. Dunk's kind of made the shirt his own over a long period of time. But the players coming through now, it's not like when the likes of Jake Robinson or Jake Forster-Cassidy came through, where we're crying out for technically able young footballers. But as you see, we've got Walton, who's been out on loan multiple seasons in a row now. I think that's the situation you're looking at, where we've got these relatively exciting young prospects. Like we signed Sufjan Ahanak, the Dutch winger, last season, and he's out on loan again. Whether they'll get to the stage where they come back and actually can stake a claim or not, it's hard to say, but the best ones will.
Yeah, well, it's that gamble, isn't it? Because that's the gamble where you hope your manager's going to, and Will Houghton, the safety. Is he going to take a gamble on a young? Maybe a forward has more of a chance. That maybe forwards have more of a chance at that age to come into the first team than a youngster.
Yeah, I think he'd be loath to just throw in youngsters in the core positions like the central midfield and stuff like that, the centre back. But yeah, I think the wide players they are likely to get the opportunity.
Yeah. So moving on to Dunk, which is we'll keep it Albion related. Obviously called up to the squad. Doesn't matter if it's by default. He's there on merit, and he's suddenly getting the praise that he was getting last season, because it's been quiet on Dunk this season. I know he suffered a bit with he had a little knock, didn't he, at the start of the year?
Yeah. Balogun came in.
Yeah.
Yes, and he perhaps hasn't quite found the form that he was at his best yet last season. But every player goes through slight dips. I don't think he's anywhere. He's not like horrendously off form.
Not at all.
It's just that perhaps Duffy's been the outstanding of the two that's so far this season, which is great. There was a period last season where it was very much the other way around.
Absolutely.
So people aren't consistent in any walk of life. Perfectly stable in the way they perform. So I think this is probably, I think there's a number of factors. Obviously, the injury to the players who've pulled out is obviously helpful, but it proves that he was in the reckoning.
The mix. Yeah.
We mentioned Dan Ashworth now being a link might be a factor. We've got Paul Nevin.
Do you think that's going to be a positive factor or a negative factor?
Yeah, I suppose.
Well, I don't know. It depends how you. It should be positive for Albion, because he can give a direct update on the quality of the players. Yeah. But you never know with the FA. I still have a little, not our Sussex FA, which are fantastic. I'm talking about the actual FA, which are still. You wonder if there's a little bit of corruption and bitterness, and just hypothetically.
Yeah, I just think it's having these. It's almost like, because there's been no Brighton footballer involved with England above the under-21 level for 36 years since Steve Foster in 1982. I think we'd almost just been, kind of disregarded and forgotten about. And we were questioning whether Southgate's Palace allegiances had given him a little blind spot.
Yes.
But I think now with Paul Nevin being involved, that Dan Ashworth link, and Dunk having been called up, maybe we can put that behind us and we can start to think about still time for Glenn Murray. Well, there probably isn't.
No, but because that was the thing that was the bigger question on the initial squad announcement, was that surely with the limited options up front, that this was now or never really for Murray to be included in a squad. And I know we've discussed this on the show many times before, that he's not obviously an option for the future, but if what you're supposed to be doing for the England team, and I know there's planning for the future, but if you're supposed to be picking the best players on form,
he's one of the top English goal scorers. But it is hard, you see the role that Harry Kane plays, even a less than firing on all cylinders Harry Kane. He needs to. The role that he plays in the England team is a lot more, requires a lot more running about than Glenn can do.
For the pressing side, maybe, but it's not like we haven't seen Albion pressing a lot more this season, and he is very clever at when he goes.
That's true.
And also, I'd argue that Murray holds the ball up better than Kane.
Probably. Or
plays others into the game. Because what I see from Kane does hold the ball up well, but he seems to take 2-3 touches, whereas Murray seems to take one or maybe two, and that's something that I've noticed more so. And he seems more comfortable at doing it, whereas last year he was taking 2 or 3 touches. This year he seems to be confident and just doing it at the right time. He seems to have increased his level of intelligence on the pitch another notch.
It's what they do, isn't it? I mean, Sheringham played until he was 40 odd.
Yeah, it was.
And he was arguably at his best between sort of 34 and 38, I would say.
He won the Champions League, didn't he, at 34, 30?
Something like that. Yeah, just such a smart player. And the fact is that if Glenn Murray were to play in the qualifiers rather than the Nations League, he'd be coming up against worse defences than he's playing up against and scoring every week. So
There we are. So we're
Campaign starts here.
We're not satisfied with Dunk for England. We're halfway there on that. Murray for England is next. The flag.
I'm going to keep it going until he retires.
Okay. Are you going to make some flags and banners and?
Yeah, sure. I'll hire a plane because that apparently works.
Maybe it does. So obviously we've got Spain to look for. Hopefully, with Stones being suspended, Dunk will be considered. Although there's obviously Gomez, who was a surprise omission from the team, but I can understand why they played two holding central midfield players against that midfield. Yeah,
it was a slightly different lineup to the one we used mostly in the World Cup, and we got Spain on Monday. So the thing about being a centre half in a squad is you're unlikely to come on at with 15 minutes to go or something.
Exactly.
So unless you get a half, unless he commits to saying Dunk's either playing the first or the second half, he's probably not going to make his appearance. But hopefully, my hope is that he's impressed Southgate with his presence and with his performances in training, in the mini games and in the whatever practices and drills they do. I think that's the thing about it's about getting your foot in the door, isn't it, and making your presence felt and making him believe that he can actually offer more than one of his other fringe picks like Tarkowski, who was obviously in the person who was literally one ahead of him. He might have had his
nipped in ahead.
Yeah,
someone like Chilwell, who had a great game yesterday. He's probably put himself firmly in first place for that left back spot.
Yeah.
Potentially. The other thing I'm going to throw back, because I don't know if you mentioned last year about I've mentioned at the start of the season about the potential of Dunk playing midfield.
Yeah.
But the role for England, where Dyer and Henderson play, or both of them play, or it was Dyer with the ability to drop back, I wonder whether that would be in this England team, this England setup, with his range of passing, whether that actually would be better suited with him being able to drop back in, with him obviously knowing the defensive side of the game, his anticipation, his willingness to put his body on the line. If you're doing it at that level before the back line, I think it could work well in this England team.
Be a bold manoeuvre.
I'm all about being bold.
I mean, they've talked about it with Maguire, haven't they? So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that it's something that he might consider. I wonder, who do you think would win in a foot race between Jordan Henderson and Lewis Dunk? Who do you think's actually quicker?
Henderson's surprisingly fit.
Yeah, he's very fit.
You think of him as this sort of, I don't know, because of that comment from Ferguson, whenever it was a few years ago. There's always that sort of blemish against Henderson in your mind, but he's not. You watch him on the pitch, and he's all over the pitch. I don't know if it's in terms of speed.
Yeah,
I don't know. Interesting one. Tom, what do you reckon? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, Dunk is fairly quick, isn't he?
Yeah,
reasonably. I don't know about the midfield thing.
That's all right. I mean, I've been championing this almost not quite as much as the Dunk for England from Leon, but
I think you miss out a lot of his special move, which is the desperation lunge, which is his kind of trademark move.
It's like a computer game.
Yeah, it's kind of just a desperate block in front of a shot. Guess you could have that as a defence midfielder, but not with as much kind of.
It wouldn't be his last gasp.
No, not as many last gasp tackles.
Just your thought on watching England. Do you after the World Cup? Have you changed your opinion?
Well, I have, although coincidentally I've not watched a single England game since the World Cup. But overall, I'm much more. That's coincidental, I think. I'm much more enthusiastic than I would have been before. I think purely because the players just kind of look like they're vaguely enjoying it, which wasn't always the case. And now with a bit of a Brighton link, that's just a bit more added interest for me. Yeah.
Fair enough. So just remind us, you're listening to the Albion Mag Radio show on 1BTN, available online, DAB Digital and 101.4 FM. Well, hopefully, as we weren't earlier on in the show. But we've got our Twitter poll. It's non-league day. We've been talking about international football. We've got our poll up on Twitter. How are we getting on, Tom?
Well, it's closed now, so we've got the final results in. So I'll run through it. We've got 13% of you couldn't care less about non-league football.
Shame on you, 13%.
25% look out for results, maybe if you know local team or whatever. 29% go whenever you can, and 33% a few times a season.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's all right, isn't it?
That's a good.
I think I'm pretty in that. I'm pretty in the few times a season. Yeah, I'm in that bracket.
Leon, you're definitely in the look out for results camp, I believe.
Admittedly, that is the case. Yeah, I'm very local to White Hawk actually, but I've always felt like I'm a Brighton and Hove Albion fan. So why would I go and watch another team? Like I totally appreciate that non-league exists, and I think I enjoy doing the roundup on here and the fact that we cover it and all that. But I don't feel the passion for the team. So. And when Brighton were, for a lot of years when I was watching Brighton, they were not much better than non-league. So I didn't really feel like doing another shift at watching another terrible team losing. So I think that's where it comes from. But yeah, it's also, time and whatever else. I like, I'll try and go and see the Albion women and the senior men, and it's there's I have various other things. It's hard just to fit everything in. If I had infinite time, I would probably go and watch non-league football more often as well.
That's I don't think you can say fairer than that, but you certainly do look out for the results. It's time to take a quick break, and we've got a new tune from our friends at Jalapeno Records, of course, friends of the show here at Brighton record label. This is Dance Now. Dance Now indeed, the Albion Mag radio show on 1BTN, available online, DAB digital and 101.4 FM. Oh, Dean Kilford, Leon Cox, Tom Stuart in the studio discussing all things Albion, although today mostly international, and of course it's non-league day, so we're going to switch attentions very shortly to the non-league. But before then, a little bit of news that's coming from Rangers about Tavernier that you've picked up on.
James Tavernier?
Yes.
I think it was in the Mirror first, and it could be a case of looking for something to fill the column inches on a quiet news week of internationals, but it was picked up by the press in Scotland, and Rangers News talked about it. They started speculating as to how much money we'd have to pay to prize their one of their prized assets, the right back, from their grasp. They were speculating that probably last season he may have been worth about 8 or 9 million, and that's probably gone up with Rangers' kind of improvement under Gerrard to maybe 12, 13 million, which obviously we know is not beyond the kind of prices that we're willing to pay for first teamers. And he's a right back, and it would make sense because we've currently got Bruno and Montoya. Charlotto probably, we think, maybe isn't going to quite cut it as a regular right back for us in the Premier League.
Which surprises me, because I know he's got many detractors, but whenever I've seen him play, I know he does make the odd mistake, but I've generally been impressed with him, particularly when he's given a task. He absolutely sticks to it, and maybe sometimes those are the things that aren't seen. If you're watching a full game, you just notice that one mistake he's made where he's, I don't know, lost his man or whatever it might be, and yeah, he's guilty of that on times, but he adds a lot of energy and a lot of good things to the team. Totally,
yeah. I mean, he's absolutely, yeah. He's incredibly quick. If we were to play 3 centre halves and then have Bernardo and Charlotto as fullbacks, I think that would be a different proposition. But in a back four, I think both it's looking like they're both still young enough to improve and work on the defensive side of their game. But I think Houghton, obviously he signed them, but he wants players who are just that little bit more consistent and reliable defensively.
But I think I was going to say Montoya at right back is mostly, the odd game aside, shown why he is the player that he has been, and adds that kind of reassured, calm composure to the back line where at times maybe that's where the naivety of Charlotto, maybe clearing the ball quickly, where Montoya would take his time, pick the right pass, or very much more composed and makes you feel at ease as a fan. So I get that.
I think a huge amount of chances in the Premier League as a whole, not just Brighton games, come from fullbacks panicking, in the sense of exactly what you just talked about, right? Rather than the old school way, like,
get it out!
Stuart Pearce or someone might have just just put it out for a throw-in or even a corner and regroup. But the amount of times you see players, I know they're encouraged to play and that's a good thing and it can lead to exciting breaks, but the amount of times you see a fullback turn and just kind of get a half-hit clearance that goes about 25 yards
straight to the opposition winger.
Straight to the opposition winger, and that opens up the whole of the penalty area for a whipped cross. I think it's a naivety, and it it's fun because it keeps the game flowing as a neutral. But
that happened quite a lot yesterday.
Yes,
for both teams.
Yeah.
That you mentioned that, but I'm with you.
But obviously, the point is about Tavernier. We have to think about Bruno. The fact that he is 38 now. 38.
He's 38.
Yeah, he's turned 38, and Murray's turned 35, and he played last week and we won, clean sheet. Everything's marvellous and we adore him, but he cannot play forever. Nobody can.
This is, yes. What was it? Father Time catches up to every man.
Yes.
Is that
his beard is not at all. He's got no white in his beard, which is not bad for a man.
Dye is a great thing.
Do you think he dyes his beard?
I'm not suggesting that, but Tom is. So moving on, last bit of Albion men's team news is Sky, very timely, just before kickoff, announced some changes to the schedule over Christmas, which will definitely affect fans travelling over, Boxing Day and New Year's particularly. But we've got the Chelsea game. It's been moved to the Sunday. 1:30 kickoff, but that was always going to happen anyway because of the Europa League, wasn't it? So they've just televised that, which is, that's probably a good thing. The home fixture, all home fixtures, isn't it? A home fixture on Boxing Day against Arsenal is now 5:15.
Yeah,
is that better? Boxing Day,
I'm fine with it. Gives you time to
digest
and
second Christmas dinner.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel I'm not somebody. I don't have too many other things to work around when it comes to football. I don't have children. I don't have any evening shifts or whatever to think about. So I'm always conscious of the fact that to some people every change is probably inconvenient. I'm very much roll with it with this stuff because I'm so aware that without Sky Money we wouldn't have anything that we've currently got. So an extra couple of hours to take in the other games and then
I was just wondering, because obviously there's never any public transport on a Boxing Day, so it gives you more time to get there.
Yeah.
So it's just probably getting home, which is always a hassle anyway. So
a frosty walk or a cab or whatever.
There you go.
That's
travel
helpful.
Advice.
That's helpful.
And finally, no game on New Year's Day. That game, our 3 points against West Ham at the London Stadium has been moved to January the 2nd.
Now that probably isn't so good for people, is it?
No.
So now it's a working day for many, whereas it wouldn't have been.
No.
So that's probably a blow for many of our travelling fans. But I'm sure that they will. Almost everyone who was intending to go will still find a way of going because that's kind of what they do, that level of commitment.
I was going to say, that's not on television.
No.
That's been moved because West Ham's game has been moved to TV on the 27th. Yeah. The way they've done it's weird. Because last year it worked out that every team had a week break, a 2 week break, or a weekend off. But it's very... There was a table and I've forgotten where it's at, but looking at the breaks that each team has over Christmas, and there's real disparity from some teams only having 5 days, so one team having like 9 days or something ridiculous like that. So it doesn't seem to have been distributed particularly fairly this year as opposed to last year when it seemed to be there was 4 fixtures one weekend, 4, and I don't know, but that's one smarts a little bit with it certainly not being on TV as well. So there we are. So I think it's... Do we want to finish off? Should we talk about the Checkatrade Trophy? I know that competition we're all in love with.
The experiment that is the Checkatrade Trophy. Really, is the attendances have been
dismal.
Yeah.
Yes, but of course the good thing for that is obviously it gives our which we don't have an under-21s team, but it gives our under-21s team a chance to play against a Peterborough team who are flying high in their League One, and they were 2-0 down with just over 10 minutes to go, and of course that man Connolly. My man Connolly scored again, and then an equaliser from Jones set up a penalty shootout, which Albion went on to win and claim 2 points. I quite like this system. which if it's a draw,
Yeah.
you have a penalty shootout
Yeah.
and for the extra point. So
Yeah.
I like that.
And it's good as penalty practice as well. In a competitive scenario, albeit only in front of a few hundred fans, but just gives you some experience of actually having to do that routine
under a more maybe not necessarily the most pressured situation,
No.
but certainly more pressure than just doing it in training.
Yeah, something, albeit something quite small, is at stake. And once again, an Albion team pluckily returns from a 2-goal deficit.
Are they taking, just because we say we want to work all the way down from the top to the bottom, doesn't mean we have to literally copy it.
Well, the next step will be for the women's team to pluckily come back from 2-0 down.
We'll get onto the women in a second. It's not such good news there. But the under-23s are in action on Friday away at bottom of the table, Blackburn Rovers. The 7th, we're in the table, but there's only 4 points from top of the table Everton to us in 7th, and only 5 points between them and Liverpool, which are a point below us. So it's a tight league.
Still only one defeat, isn't it?
Only one defeat, lots and lots of draws.
I fancy us to win at Blackburn if they're rock bottom. And
they've got a couple of very good young players, which is obviously why they're in that league. Because I remember last season seeing, I think Albion won 2-1. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that's listening, but they had a couple of young players that really lit up the game. Skillful young, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but if they're not in the first team, they might well be in the first team. And maybe that's why they're bottom of the league now. Who knows?
I'm not sure how seniors are doing for Blackburn currently.
They're doing all right. Yeah, they're pushing towards the playoffs. I think they're about 9th or 10th. That's off my flash memory of the league table.
Not bad.
Onto the women's team. They are in action away at Everton tomorrow, looking for their first point and first goal in the WSL 1. Of course, last time out they lost 2-0 to Chelsea, and they've been and every other game's finished 1-0. So they've had a couple of weeks off. It's been the women's international break. Just a little word that's just came out a couple of days ago. They're at home to Man City next Sunday, on the 20th.
Super value tickets.
Yeah, so if you're a season ticket holder for the men's team, you'll get in for £1.
Yeah,
that's fantastic value, fantastic idea, fantastic initiative. So yeah, anyone that we'll obviously reiterate that next week. But tomorrow they're in action away at Everton and at home to Man City the following Sunday, but you can get in for £1 if you're a season ticket holder.
Come on, the Albion. Tough games, but something's gonna happen soon.
The thing is that despite the defeat to Chelsea, which was less than the defeat they suffered in the Continental Cup and the Continental Cup last year, so things are improving, and I think, as I said, they've got so many new players. It's going to be hard for them to gel and come into.
It's a journey. It's a process.
Yes, they just need to stay up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's the key. Right, that pretty much covers everything Albion. So you know what happens next.
We got this for 20 minutes now.
We haven't got this for 20 minutes. It is non-league day, so we're going to, throw in a special non-league, because there's an Albion-related non-league story, of course. Solly March started for Lewis. I think you might need to come over to this mic, because speaking on that mic, I've realised that this doesn't quieten down. So there we are. So, of course, Solly March started at Lewis and has made his way through. I don't know if he actually played a first-team game for Lewis. I'm not sure. I don't think he did. You, Tom? Tom's nodding, saying he did. So there's our little link. Of course, the teams playing today, lots of different initiatives going on. Burgess Hill Town, you can get in for £1. We're talking about £1 a game. They're doing £1 for a game. If you're wanting to watch Worthing today, they've just announced a sponsorship with Budweiser in their bar for their beer. Each to their own. But the first 50 people through the turnstiles get a free pint today. That's not a bad way to start. I haven't had any other correspondence about deals going on from other clubs, because sometimes quite a lot of clubs do deals on non-league day, but plenty to choose from. We'll go through the games momentarily, but we'll do our roundup from last week. It was FA Cup weekends. I did stay in touch despite being, a few thousand miles away. I kept in touch. White Hawk, that was a day to forget. 9-1 defeats away at Billericay Town, although they did score the last goal, so they were claiming last goal wins. Didn't happen. They also travelled to Corinthian Casuals, who were struggling in the Bostik Premier, and they lost 2-0. So a bad week for the Hawks. But they're looking to put that right at home today against Brightlingsea Regents, and the TAM team will be there. This is our non-league game of choice. Tom, are you looking forward to your journey to the enclosed ground, or as it's currently known, the Terrapura enclosed ground?
Terrapura, yeah, I'm very much so. It's like Brightlingsea Region. That's a brilliant team name, isn't it? I love that. Yeah, I went quite a lot last season to White Hawk, because I was living in Kemp Town at the time. Not been this season, so I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, they got relegated last year, but I'm sure it'll be a bumper crowd. Yeah, it'd be great.
White Hawk need the points. They're currently 15th in the table. They won't have been helped by the news that Brandon O'Neill left the club on Thursday due to personal reasons. Both the club and he came out, mentioned, not quite sure what that is, but they'll certainly miss him and his goals from midfield. So we'll be there later and we'll give you a full report on this show next week. And next up, we'll go to Lewis, because that's just about as close. It's not that far away. They are also out of the FA Cup, lost 3-0 to Bath City. They're travelling to Potters Bar Town today, and then they're also away to Hornchurch on Tuesday. They are currently 11th in the league, but they've only played 8 games because in their FA Cup run, they've decided to have replays every round. So they've played a lot of extra games in the Cup, but not so many league games. So I worked out if they won their games in hand, they would actually be in the top 4. So there you go. So the Rooks are doing quite well in their first season back in the Premier League. As are Worthing, who are currently second, and they're at home to Kingstonian, as we mentioned before, and they are one of only 2 Sussex clubs through to the 4th qualifying round of the FA Cup. A stunning 3-2 win away at Moneyfields last week. They've been drawn away at Ebbsfleet of the National League in the 4th qualifying round. Eastbourne Borough, for those of you wondering, are the other team that remain in the FA Cup. They've had also, in that FA Cup win, they lost their goalkeeper to a broken arm, Lucas Coverland, who arguably is the best goalkeeper in the league. That's not just Worthing fans saying that, that's just a general opinion amongst Bostik League Premier followers. So his injury actually isn't as bad as feared. He actually snapped it back in place on the pitch, and so his recovery time is due to be quicker than anticipated, and he's got his Worthing coloured plaster on his arm. There's images of that. So we're wanting to see who they've signed, because Worthing are making a late announcement for who their goalkeeper, they've signed a goalkeeper for today for the next few weeks. But Ross Edwards and Jesse Starkey have left the club during the week. Not sure what that's about, but they also travel to Mersham on Wednesday, for those of you that want to follow. Speaking of teams doing well in the Bostik Premier, Bognor Regis Town. Yes, Worthing's rivals are currently 3rd in the league and have had a week off, because they were obviously out the FA Cup, and they've had a nice time just to relax, and they travelled to Tonbridge Angels today. If you fancy going to watch them, they're at home on Tuesday to Folkestone Invicta. I like that name, Folkestone Invicta. What a great name. At the other end of the Bostik Premier, Burgess Hill Town are still bottom, although they did claim a point in a 2-2 draw at Bishop Stortford on Saturday. As I mentioned before, they're at home to Haringey Borough today. £1 entry. Doesn't matter whether you're a season ticket holder or not, or whatever, it's £1 entry. Under 16s go for free there as well. But they got their first victory in over a month. They beat Tooting and Mitcham in the Velocity Trophy on Tuesday night. So hopefully, although Ian Chapman is currently no longer at the helm, he's still on his... it's not a leave of absence. He offered to resign. I think we covered this last week on the show. So he's temporarily away from the club. Could still return, but hopefully they'll pick up, because it's good to see our local clubs doing well. Lancing, well, they suffered defeat in their replay to Hendon. They went down 4-0 on Sunday and followed that up with a 7-0 defeat to Pagham in the Sussex Senior Cup, which started this week, although they did field a very, very young weakened team in that one, so probably not too much to read into that. They travel to Broadbridge Heath today, and then they've got a Friday night game against Langley Wanderers. Because I'm not quite sure whether that's on a Friday, but I'm guessing Langley must share their pitch with another team, so yeah, that's a Friday night fixture. We'll talk about the teams at home. If you're in and around the area, these are the teams you can go and watch. Horsham host Ware in the FA Trophy preliminary round. Horsham are another team that went out of the FA Cup last week. They went home actually to Potter's Bar in a replay on Tuesday. They drew 1-1 at home before losing that replay. Haywards Heath Town host Bracknell Town, also in the FA Trophy. And Three Bridges host Molesey, a team. Three Bridges are having a torrid season. I think they've averaged conceding 3 or 4 goals a game. So if you want to see some goals, get yourself to Three Bridges. Shoreham, they're at home. They hope to end an 11-game winless streak. It's not been a good couple of seasons for them after winning the league a couple of years ago. They host Langley Wanderers today. And finally, Peacehaven and Telscombe travel to Redhill in the FA Vars. And then they also travel to Stenning in the Peter Bentley Cup on Tuesday. I know that, Leon, you're a big fan of the Peter Bentley Cup. You're a massive fan of that trophy. Yes, big thumbs up there. That just about wraps up the non-league roundup. I'm going to close the bed down because then you can talk, Leon.
Are we back?
We're back.
I know we've had issues with coming out of the reggae bed before and then and being greeted by nothing but silence.
Oh, well, we're here now. We're definitely here, and I'm sure our listeners can still hear us on all mediums.
Hopefully, always a bonus.
So, non-league wise, obviously, I know you've got your podcast and your other works to record today, so you can't actually get to a game today.
No, I won't be at the Hawk today. But you, Tom, and Dan, the esteemed editor, creative lead of the Albion Mag, will be there.
Paul will also be there.
Paul Druitt, regular guest, who's been joined us several times this season. So yeah, I look forward to hearing back about what goes down.
Yeah. There's a few local derbies coming up, so maybe we'll try and there's midweek ones. Maybe we'll do a second trip down there. I know Whitehawk and Worthing are playing in a couple of weeks, and I think Lewis, Bognor Regis in a couple of weeks as well. So yeah, we're definitely going to get you down there. So we'll move you up in the poll from just looking out for results to when you can.
When I can, a few times a season.
Non-league wise, didn't Glenn Murray speak about this during the week? Did I?
Yeah, there's a lengthy piece on BBC. It's been picked up elsewhere about his whole career, really. I mean, he does a lot of media now, Glenn. He works, I know, as well as turning up on Sky. He works for one of the, I think possibly Al Jazeera, I'm not sure, but I know one of the 5 Live broadcasters was talking about how they work with him regularly on an international broadcaster. So I think he's making a real go for it. He's
definitely planning his future, isn't he?
Definitely, yeah. And yes, absolutely. He not only was he working as a plasterer, I think it was, and playing non-league football. He hated the game. He'd fallen out of love with it, and it's. I think he's now, as we've said, like, he seems so much happier. He's really appreciating what he's got because of where he came from, and not every, as we've said before, not every professional footballer is passionate about the game of football. Some of them are absolutely obsessed with it and mad for it. Some players, it's just a job, and I think in some cases, like with Murray, it started out as the career because it's the thing you're best at, and I think because it's gone so well for him in the latter stages of his career, he's almost like he's sort of latterly, I think, fallen in love with the whole thing, which I think is quite romantic, isn't it?
We spoke about players going abroad to play football. Is there a thought that maybe players should go and play non-league? I know a lot of players get loaned down to lower leagues, but what if they actually experience the rough changing rooms and the traditional banter of the dressing room, as they call it, but that kind of grounding. If you think you've been a youth player at a club since the age of, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, 30, whatever age it might be, and all of a sudden at 16, 17 you get thrown into a men's game, at a much lower level where it's taken very differently. Obviously still as serious in wanting to win, but maybe from a mental point of view that could be a good, I mean, I don't think it would suit every player, but certainly some of them it would give a good grounding and a good
There's a few in the England squad now who have at least played lower league football, if not non-league football. But I think Vardy played non-league, didn't he?
Vardy did, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, certainly players like Kane and Ali were loaned out.
Well, no, Ali was at MK Dons.
Ali was at MK Dons, yeah.
But Kane only, I think he played for, maybe he did play for League One, but not many games, yeah.
Millwall, possibly?
Yeah, it wasn't many games he played for.
Yeah. But yes, I think, as we were saying earlier about the Albion players who have gone out to, some of them have gone abroad to play at perhaps a less high standard. Some of them have dropped down the leagues. And in the case of Walton keeps coming to mind because it's such an interesting one, because he must feel like he's been part of successful campaigns there, and he's still our player, and you'd wonder if whether he's got genuine designs of coming back and making the number one shirt, as it were, his own, or whether he kind of anticipates that at some point the move will become permanent, while Wigan continue to try to get back up to where they were.
Well, it'd be interesting to see because Wigan are doing well again this season. If they did achieve promotion, that would be an interesting... particularly if they won in the playoffs, the penalty shootout, and he made a couple of... I'm just hypothetising, but...
Well, every successful season that a lone player of ours has, wherever it is adding to their value. So even if we decide not to bring them back, like I imagine, obviously Norwood had a successful season last year.
Yeah, it helped Fulham gain promotion. I mean, 40 odd. He played like 45, 46 games, which is, it's not like he was a bit part player in their promotion campaign. No,
and obviously we were the recipient of a number of a huge number of Premier League talents. I'm using air quotes in cases of some in previous years, and they were the players coming down to us to get blooded in first team football. Obviously not the lower leagues. We're talking not for a while anyway, but we're talking about the Championship. And I now find it fascinating to see which of those have gone on to do well and which of those have gone on to obscurity. Like Jesse Lingard, I think
Lingard is the...
I think we knew was good, but we also thought Teixeira was probably similarly talented, and he's kind of disappeared.
Well, Lingard, I remember everyone thinking, he's not that much. He's not that... No, I thought he was a good player, but...
Right.
I just didn't rate him as much as... I don't know, what do you reckon, Tom? Did you get to see much of Lingard?
I mean, he obviously came with quite a big reputation, because I think in a previous loan spell, he had a really good goal-scoring record. I think it was at Birmingham, just before us. He was good for us, but I certainly wouldn't have thought, when I looked at him, like, there's a future England starter. He was decent enough, but I think we've had better loan players than him.
Yeah,
but Teixeira being one of them, I think he was much more impressive. And I think he got quite a bad injury when he was with us, didn't he? He did right at the end of his spell. He had quite a bad injury, and it doesn't seem to have really recovered since then. I think he's playing in Portugal again now. I can't remember who for. I mean, he was much more impressive than Lingard, I thought.
There you go. I think that's a good point to leave it on. Teixeira is better than Lingard, but
what's happened to James Wilson?
You've been listening to the Albion Mag radio show. You can get in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook at TAM Radio Show. We've got our thread on North Stand Chats. We'll have a poll up in the week. We'll have a little think about that. See what we decide. If any initial thoughts.
How good was Lewis Dunk on his England debut against Spain?
Love it. See, that's what we'll leave you with. Enjoy non-league day, whichever club you decide to go and support. If not, enjoy your day of shopping, because I guess that's all you do on a Saturday if you don't go and watch football.
It's the traditional concept, isn't it? Yeah.
You've been listening to Dean,
and Leon, and Tom.
Thanks very much. We'll leave you with a tune from our friends at Jalapeno Records, The Allergies with Blast Off.
Right.